Hey YouTube, this is Pecktec, and how are you doing today? I want to talk to you about this new tank that I've done. It's the dirted 20 gallon is what I'm calling it. That's a super creative name. You're welcome. You're welcome. So recently I decided that I wanted to redo my 210 downstairs, and I know that's a weird segue into this aquarium, but downstairs I want to redo my 210, and I was thinking about making it a dirted tank, like a really huge dirted tank. I know I want a planted tank, and I want it to be a planted tank that kind of goes and gets and just really gets overgrown and full. I'm just not getting that from the way I set it up before. The way I set it up before was probably okay, but I didn't do near enough to like really incentivize plant growth in my substrate, because the expensive substrates would just be way too expensive to fill up the whole tank. And I might have been able to find a sponsor to go and do that, but even back then it would have been pretty difficult. And I don't think I want to do it today. I don't want to pour that much aquarium soil into the bottom of a tank and try to wait for it to balance out, although I'm sure I could do it. Now what I'd really like to do is I want to do a dirted tank, and this is going to be sort of the framework for how I use it. I've got little pieces of the same wood, of these big pieces that I want to use. All this material's easily to scale up to a bigger tank, so that was kind of what's in the back of my head as we go through the setup for this. This is a whole setup video and goes on for weeks and weeks after the setup, and so the video is quite long compared to perhaps my other videos, some of them. But I do have links down below where you can skip to different time codes to see any different parts, or if you want to rewatch and just watch specific parts, it's all linked down there in the description. Before we go any further though, I want to thank my Patreons. Just a real quick shout out, past, present, and future Patreons. Thank you so much for helping me out and making this a better show. With this light here that I bought, that was all directly from my Patreon money, and I couldn't have done it without you. It's a really cool budget light that ramps up and ramps down, and I'll tell you more about it later, but I think I want to try it out for a little bit first, and then I'll give you my opinion on it. Okay, so let's get right to the setup for this, and I'll tell you kind of what I've been doing after the setup, and I'll see you in just a minute. So as you can see here, I've got this egg crate. This is actually diffusion filter that you would put over the top of a, I guess those lights like you put in the drop ceilings and stuff. This is good for all kinds of little projects. What this is going to do is, this will kind of keep the substrate from riding up and like wanting to come over. I noticed in some of my other deep substrate beds, I was starting to see in the front, I'm starting to see some of the stuff from underneath. I definitely don't want that to happen. I saw this trick in another video, and I actually considered taking this whole thing, maybe grinding down some of the bottom pieces of this and making it into a, I don't know, maybe a plenum of some sort, like putting some fabric over it, making a plenum. But I was afraid that the plants would root into that fabric, and then if I ever went to go pull them out, I would pull this thing up, or maybe at least the whole fabric part up. And I just don't want to deal with any of that. I actually went out and bought a proper plenum for this too, but I don't want to keep this. I don't want it to be like so tall. This is kind of a tall tank, so I can do a deep substrate and still do a nice aquascape. But I want to save myself that extra inch for the plenum, so I'm not going to mess with it on this project. And what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to keep this as is, but I'm going to trim this down, and I'll probably add a section here on the end so that it goes all the way across. And I'm gonna stop it just shy of going all the way to the edge. I'm gonna fill that with sand so you don't see it, and hopefully it'll stay sandy all the way around here, and no dirt will ride up or anything. So let's go ahead and take care of that. Alright, so we've got these cut. I'm gonna put them a little bit back away from the sides. Oops, I need to trim that down a little bit. One more section. Trimming these, I just use these scissors. This thing does shatter really easily and break and stuff, and it goes everywhere. I'm going to have to vacuum now. But yeah, it's really easy to trim this stuff. and very versatile. You can use it for a lot of different things. Alright, so I have my barrier protector there, at least for the front. And the thing I'm going to do next is I'm going to add my substrate, which is pool filter sand. I'm going to add this. Around the edges. Maybe I should use it. This bag's a little heavy to manhandle. All right, so I'm going to carefully start my barrier here. Go ahead and do the sides and back too, not with the egg crate, but just the sand, just to create a little well to start our substrate lasagna in. And oh yes, there will be a lasagna. Hopefully the mixture we come up with works well. I'm going to make a nice wall to kind of give myself an idea about how deep I want that other substrate to be. I'm going to tighten this up just a little bit. Make sure it's nice and even. Leave me as much room in the middle as I can to lock in the freshness. The next thing I'm going to add is some aragonite, which is a crushed coral. And I'm doing this in hopes of helping to balance the pH a little bit. I also add kind of a crunchy texture right here on the very bottom layer. I'm not adding a lot, just a little bit to gradually be absorbed and come into play, maybe to help us out a little bit at the very bottom. The next thing I'm going to add is I'm going to add a little bit of iron. So I found this. So this is a laterite powder. It's just sort of a red clay powder. I'm doing this in lieu of adding clay or anything to the bottom here. This is a great food for bacteria. They love this high iron content. Also, your plants that have red in their color, they're going to enjoy having some of that. I'm going to put some of this at the bottom and at the top. I really like this stuff. I'm really happy to find this in a powder form. I've been using this red clay powder that I got in a My Aquarium box, but of course, My Aquarium box is no more. So I'm glad to find another source for it. Something else I'm adding right to the bottom of the Pecktec is that crushed, I've got in this bag because it made a real mess, this crushed lava rock. Let's stick that right at the base. It's a little chunkier than I wanted. Just pull this in here. A little dustier too. This is going to be a dusty one. I'm just going to pour it all out here and we'll see what we got. Okay. Some of these huge chunks I don't think I really need in there. I'm going to kind of spread this stuff out evenly along the bottom here. Oh, why not? Just put it in there. Alright. That'll create some kind of voids in there. Not a lot, just a little bit. Keep it from being too bunched up. Next, we're going to do some dirt. What's a dirted tank without some dirt, right? I'm going to add a pretty generous portion in here. I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about pulling out the big chunks. I think a lot of people I see on YouTube talk about pulling out the big chunks, but a few people I've met in person say don't pull it out. That'll just add to the composting in here. Let me even this out and see where I'm at. Those rocks are in here kind of messing with me a little bit. There we go. Alright, that's sort of losing track of how much that's up. Maybe an inch of dirt. I'm going to put a little bit at the top. I'll make sure to get at least an inch of dirt in here. Up through the middle of this thing. A lot of people like to work with this wet. I prefer not to. I prefer to just not to. I'm not into mud pies or anything like that. Alright, that's maybe even too much dirt. I think I've got plenty of dirt going in there now. Okay, the next thing I got is a little bag of supplement. This is enough to do a 100-gallon tank, about 100 gallons, maybe a little bit more. This is from Father Fish, and it's got it's got a lot of different ingredients. And I am definitely not following the instructions that Father Fish gave. So if this blows up in my face, it's my own fault. But I am going to add this. And not a lot of it, but just some of this. Because like you said, this is for, this bag here would treat 100 gallons. We're just doing 20 gallons today. Looks like sand. I'm sure it's got a bunch of stuff in it. It looks like sand. Cool. Not sure if that was too much or not enough, but what I'm going to do is just kind of like mix it in the sand, mix it in the dirt. Kind of get it sort of evenly distributed around through here. This has got all kinds of cool stuff in it, like worm castings and everything else. Some of the supplements I saw, some of these topsoils and things, they also have some of these ingredients. He's been at it a long time and he's put a lot of cool stuff in there, so. Alright. I'm going back in with the Brightwell laterite powder. Just going to put a little bit more in there. Just sprinkling across the top. I'm going to give that a gentle little stirring with my hand. Gently, try not to knock it all over my border here. The problem I had with the, I've done dirty tanks before, and I've got a video called Getting Dirty if you want to know more about it. But in that video, I used these big chunks of clay. And what happened is the plants grew down into the clay, and when I pulled them out, they pulled out the clay with it. So it wasn't a very good call on my part. Now what I want to do is I want to cap this off, and I'm going to start kind of I'm going to go the way I started, and kind of go around the edge first, and just kind of work my way up towards the middle. I would like about a 2-inch cap, so I got to remember that was about here to begin with. A lot of times when I do this, I just go ahead and pull the bag up and just pour it in, but I'm not doing that this time. Very carefully lay it down, because this is a really important foundation inside of a dirty tank is the cap. I'm using pull filter sand because it's cheap and really easy to plant in. Actually, quite pleasurable to plant in. Note, I didn't pull out any sticks or anything. I only saw one that looked like it could be a problem. Alright. Now that's the dirt just barely covered. I need to go over it again. And now I'm getting impatient, so I'm just going to pour the bag in. Oh, not really? I don't know. I would be more comfortable if this were a little bit deeper. A little bit deeper would be better for me. So it was about here. Probably only about 1 inch cap. So maybe I think next I need to just get some more sand. All right, just a little bit more sand, and we will be good to go. Sorry, did I say a little more sand? So much sand. Yeah. Alright, we have a nice thick cap. Basically, we turned this into a 15-gallon tank. Maybe a 12. So thick. It's a lot thicker than I usually go. About 4 inches or so. So that's about where the dirt is, and there's like another 1.5 inches, 2 inches above that. So hopefully that will work. All right, next I'm going to use some driftwood, and what I've got is this ghost wood. If you see the video I did, let's go this way. If you watch the video that I did where I went to Orlando to Aquashella, that's where I got this, at that really cool wood place. Also just did an interview with them recently at this Aquashella, at the current Aquashella, so that's pretty cool. So what I'd really like to do here is I'd like to create a little drama with the wood kind of sticking out. I have soaked this. I soaked this actually just today, and it's already starting to sink, so I've got high hopes. Tremendous amount of tannins, though, coming out of this, so I'm not sure. This is probably going to be a big brown mess before too long. So I probably have to do a lot of water changes to kind of get those tannins to calm down. But I'm using this as a support, and it's got some nice little arching. Got all kind of pointed the same way. There's little lines inside of the wood really help to define the direction and stuff that we're going. So that's really nice. I've got it pitched low enough. I would like to go a little bit higher with one of these. I need to keep it pitched low enough so that when I go to put a lid on here later, I'll be able to. I have to be careful in the dirted tanks too. I found this out the hard way on my last one. Is one thing to be wary of, aside from touching the front, is digging into it with the wood, because that's another thing. I pulled up some stuff that I had buried in there. Pulled up some of that red clay that I'd buried in there. Got stuck inside of some of the wood, and when I push it in like that to kind of push it into place, which I tend to do a lot. All right, so I'm trying to keep the front clear, and I got to make this so it doesn't move around. Okay. That's not what I had in mind. Let's see. It could touch the back, that's fine. I never cleaned the back of the aquarium. A lot of this wood will be covered, and I'll be covering these cut edges and stuff on the end. You always want to try to cover that part up. These all kind of look like they were busted up and kind of busted up on their own, but because they're, you know, they're kind of rough. They're not so man-made looking. You know, you can't necessarily see the cuts. Maybe kind of a little bit on this one, but for the most part, everything just looks broken. Whereas down there, it's obviously been cut. So we want to hide that, and we'll do that with plants. And I've got a big anubias that's going to go out through here, and I'm going to plant the crypt parv all through the bottom here, and I might do some Monte Carlo on the other side. I've got these really neat rocks that I got at one of the fish swaps here recently. I actually got it from a store down in Chattanooga, and it's one of Ed's local stores, and he's down there all the time. Aquatic Aesthetics is what it's called. I filmed a video about a swap over there at the store recently. I have a literal bucket full of plants. I mean, you can see the water line, but it's densely packed full of plants all the way down. This little 3-gallon bucket. So I'm going to start pulling that. So before I really start planting these plants that I pulled, I'm going to go through and kind of pull off all the dead stuff. With the swords, it's easy. You kind of go around the perimeter, because the new stuff's always on the inside, you know, or pretty much always from the inside. So you can go around the perimeter and kind of get the older stuff, the dead stuff. Try not to go too nuts with it, but a little pruning will go a long way towards making this one grow. We also don't need the entire root, you know, the root structure here. If it's got a runner, like this has got a little runner and stuff, sometimes you can keep it or just toss it too. But I'm going to take this and kind of go down about this far. Just pull that off. Makes it easier to plant, and they'll kind of spawn these roots and encourage them to start growing. Alright, so I got a little specimen like that. I'm going to put that in there and then continue. now that the crazy aquascape day is over and things have settled down a bit, I'm just going through and getting little strays that need to be planted somewhere else or just kind of floated around. And I'm also redirecting all these roots right to the bottom here. I've sort of made a void underneath all this wood, and I've deliberately not really put anything there. That'll be a terrific hide for the fish, but what's going to make it even more hidden and more useful for me visually is all the roots. These anubias, they don't need to be planted in the ground. They grow along this rhizome, which is like a little nodule here, this little spine that they're all growing up. These roots really go a really long way. They can get quite long. And what I like to do is right off the bat, I kind of make a plan for where they're going to be. And if I'm making like a tree kind of thing, which is pretty easy to do with anubias, usually the scale doesn't work. But like with anubias nana here, I can sort of make a little, almost like a tree with it or something like that. But if you've got a plan for the roots, and you know that they're all going to be pointed right down, I'm just going to help them out. They're going to take the path of least resistance anyway. So if I just make sure they're all pointed down into here the best I can, got a few little strays going up here, see, like all this. Just push that down here. All these little strays, just get them going the way I want. And they could go just straight down into the dirt from there. And it'll look nice and clean. And they'll grow better, I think. I would imagine, anyway. I tend to do this a couple of weeks after I do my aquascape. I go back in, and I kind of, whoops, I just pulled everything out. I go back in there, and I just kind of make sure everything's going the way I want. Because for the most part, I'll leave it alone. I'm going to get this set, and I'll set it, forget it. Well, I won't forget it, because I'll be looking at it every morning when I wake up. But I will be not tending it, hopefully. These are these giant Java fern. This one isn't particularly huge, but I've seen other ones get really, really enormous. I'm going to move you to the corner. I like to mix Java fern in here. Did I just break it? I did. I like to mix Java fern in here with the anubias, just kind of periodically here and there. It just kind of helps break up the texture, give it a little bit different look here in different areas. Wedge here like that. A lot of people use glue to attach these and stuff. I find that I usually can find a place to wedge them, and it's kind of a fun game to see if I can successfully wedge something until it just grows there. Just something fun I like to do. But yeah, I think we're ready to put some water back in. All right, so right away I noticed I was going to have an issue with the tannins, and I wanted this to be a no-filter aquarium, but I had this aqua clear sitting around, so I loaded it up with carbon. So there's no mechanical, no biological filtration in there at all. It's just carbon and pushing the water around, basically. I eventually traded that out for a little box filter that I think worked a lot better. And as usual, with a tank about this time in its life, it started to develop all these diatoms, little things growing on it. And the parv melted back a lot. It was kind of surprising. I think I lost about half of the parv, the crypt parv down there at the bottom. No worries, though. That'll grow back. The other stuff is just kind of surviving at this point. Getting diatoms, like I said, growing all over them and little tiny critters in there floating around. It's kind of interesting. Pretty soon, though, just like with the 43 gallon, the snails emerged, and the snails went in there and they started eating up all this stuff that had grown over, all those diatoms and things that had grown over the plants. Not 100%, but quite a bit, and went in there and started cleaning things up. It's looking a lot better in there. I also added some floating plants at this point, and a new light. The new light we'll talk more about in just a little bit. But it really spread the light around and looks really nice. I did a water test, and the water tested okay. So I decided to add an Endler. And the Endler is just kind of in there chilling alone in his big house. I decided to also buy this plant. It was kind of an impulse buy. I don't think I've had one of these before. I can't remember, but it looked really interesting. So I popped it in sort of the mid-ground there, almost the background. And did another water change. I just keep doing those water changes steady to keep those tannins low. And I've got that box filter in there, just kind of moving the water around. It's actually on a timer, so it goes off at night. So it's kind of a filterless aquarium, I guess. And here it is today. I did a water change just yesterday, to confess. It does still get brown. And that's not a totally a bad thing, but I do want my plants to grow, and I don't want things to be too dark while everything's kind of getting established anyway. So I definitely have some things to think about when I go to do my 210, because I've got really major big pieces of the same type of wood. We'll deal with that we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. Now, to maintain this tank, what I've been doing, the first couple of times that I did water changes, I kind of did like a small partial water change. And other times I did some major water changes where I pulled really a lot. It just depends on how long I went in between water changes and how dense the tea had become. At times, this was so brown and so thick that I thought it would never clear up. But I think I've kind of gotten on the other side of that. It's getting a lot better now. I did forget to mention that at some point I added a heater into the back here also. So I've got a little heater in here keeping this nice and warm. I haven't decided. I want to do a no filter aquarium, but I'm having a whole lot of trouble pulling even just that little box filter. A box filter that's on a timer. So it's just got carbon in it, but it blows the water around and kind of keeps the circulation going, which is something I always thought was really important with plants. And with no fish in there to kind of move things around, I wanted something else in there to kind of move the water. One thing I definitely noticed is that if there's nothing in there picking up the debris and stuff, the sand's going to look really, really dirty all the time until of course the carpeting plants take over. Hopefully that'll happen. I was surprised it had the melt back with the crypt, but hopefully they'll just continue to get better and better and start to come back. I'm already seeing growth in here in different areas, and sometimes they melt and then the leaves blow away and it looks like everything's gone, and then something comes up out of the sand. So I'm hoping for a little surprise or two like that too. The anubias and the sword and stuff are a little meh. You know, they're not doing super great, but they're not dead. And I've trimmed them up. I've trimmed off a few dead leaves and stuff like that have happened since then. But they're bound to come back as soon as those roots kind of get settled in and everything gets calmed down in here. So when I do water changes, I've been doing some, like I said, different levels. But I'm changing them out with water from other aquariums. So I've got my 57-gallon here. Right on the other side of me, and I've got the other tanks upstairs. I'll take water out of them, do a big water change with them, and put it back into here. Sometimes mixed with a little bit of tap water too to kind of get it just where I want it. But and that's it. Just a few water changes. For those of you that are curious, here's where I'm at with the water parameters. Here's the things I tested. There was one point with my 55 when I did this before where there's sort of this explosion of plant growth. And I'm kind of waiting on that before I really start adding a bunch of fish and stuff in here just to kind of keep it from getting too complicated and too full of algae. I'm hoping that happens in here too. That explosion of growth, it was really exciting when it happened before. And I tried to make it this time so it would be a little bit more prolonged and just kind of ongoing instead of kind of a flash in the pan, which is what it seemed like last time I did it. I used about half the amount of dirt last time, so hopefully I did better. Definitely did a much bigger cap than I used to do, and I've loved that. The sand's very self-healing, so when you pull stuff out, the sand will kind of collapse back on itself. You do have little gas pockets and stuff, and little bubbles will develop and kind of bubble out of here. That's completely normal. Dirted tanks are really interesting, and I can't wait for that growth explosion like I saw the last time. When that happens in here, I'll be very excited, and I'm hoping that happens soon. If you want to see that, be sure to subscribe. This is a great segue to say, please give it a like. If you liked this video, if you liked me putting this together for you, give it a like and subscribe so we can come back and meet and look at this tank in a few weeks, a few months, and a few years maybe, hopefully, if it does great. Have any suggestions for fish that you'd like to see in here? Just leave a comment down below. Anything you would have done different, I'd be happy to hear it. Just let me know. That's all I got for you this week and that's all I have for you this week. Until next time, follow your bliss. And that's all I have for you this week. Until next time, follow your bliss, keep a clean tank, and I'll see you soon. Be sure to check out some more videos if you'd like to see more aquarium videos. This is every aquarium video I've ever made in one playlist if you want to binge. If you want to go down here, this is a video YouTube thinks that you'll like a lot. So you should check it out. Bye!